Someone mailed me a sex doll that looks exactly like my dead wife. Call me delusional, call me whatever you'd like. God knows I've heard it all, and from my own family and friends. The people I thought would always believe me have written me off as some kind of nutcase, fueled by grief to drag all of my loved ones into my own perverted delusions. And so I turn here to a place where I have no one whose opinions of me I care about. No offense. Eleanor's funeral was a small event. It was less than what I would have chosen for her, but it was already more than what her family and I could afford combined. And I knew that she wouldn't have wanted any of us going completely bankrupt for her, even in the event of her death. It sounds so ridiculous and maybe even cold to those who didn't know her. But the times when I hear her voice the most in my head are when dealing with my finances. Put those chips down! The lights in the convenience store would flicker, and I would swear she was with me, and my hands would shake, causing the bag of Doritos to crinkle, causing the clerk to squint his eyes at me from behind the counter. Jesus Christ, Diego, the electricity bill is already late. Are you crazy? And then we would say it together, except my voice came out of my mouth and hers was only imaginary, and the clerk would look at me all crazy and she got away without embarrassment because she wasn't alive anymore and I was every dollar counts. Yeah, spare me the lecture, Ellie. Anyways, it was small, and after a gathering at the funeral home, closed casket of course, it took place in her grandmother's backyard. It was catered by her favorite restaurant, and we labeled it a celebration of life. And we all gathered around an unlit fire pit and told stories about her, until her mother's crying was so loud even from the upstairs bedroom that her brother told us it was time for us all to go home. He was the only one who even really looked at me that entire night. As I was leaving, he stopped me, grabbing my arm. Diego, he sighed, rubbing at his face with the hand that wasn't still holding onto me as if I was going to flee. Are you, doing okay? I didn't know what to say to that. Was I okay? Did he mean in the grand scheme of things, or right this second? Was he asking if I was okay or if I was going to kill myself? I didn't know the answer to any of it. I had always hated that question, and right then it felt almost hilariously impossible to respond to. I blinked at him dumbly. Sure. He looked at me for a few seconds too long to be comfortable. I knew what he wanted to say. He wanted to say, "It's not your fault, Diego." He wanted to say, "Ignore our family. They're heartbroken and they don't know what to think right now." I pulled my arm away, letting him off the hook. "I'll see you around," I blanked. He nodded weakly. That was the sort of awkward interaction that previously probably would have haunted me for weeks. I would have paced in our bedroom that night, with Eleanor lying on the bed, trying to read through my anxious rambling and rolling her eyes at me. But right then, this time, it was gone from my head almost as soon as he was out of my field of vision. I didn't want to go home, so I drove around for a while. I avoided every spot that we used to go to. At every right turn we used to take, I would turn left. At every intersection, I fought the urge to close my eyes so I wouldn't picture her waiting on the corner after work, waving to me to pick her up. I ran a couple of stop signs, wanting to get out of every familiar neighborhood as quickly as possible. It didn't take long for me to realize it was no use. She was everywhere. She would always be everywhere. I just had to bite the bullet. The package didn't faze me at first. It looked unassuming sitting on our doorstep, large and silent. I almost just shoved it aside to lumber through the front door so I could pass out on the couch and turn off my brain. But something stopped me. Her voice. "Whose package is this? Is it yours, Diego?" That was when I took pause, because it wasn't mine, or at least I didn't think it was. Like I said, Eleanor hadn't been strict necessarily, but she was always very financially conscious. A purchase that would have come in the size of a box would have at least been a conversation when she had been alive, and after she hadn't been anymore, I hadn't exactly had the urge to shop online. I inspected it. It kind of felt like it was inspecting me back. I looked for a label, anything, any sign that it was meant for one of the neighbors, but there was nothing. It was just a large, unmarked cardboard box, sealed shut with straight and clean lines of clear packing tape. I sighed, burdened by the idea of lugging it inside, but curiosity and that voice in my head won out in the end. I dropped the box in the living room and shuffled to the kitchen, grabbing a beer from the fridge and a pair of scissors. Popping the lid off the bottle with the blade, I slumped onto the couch, staring at it in animosity. In a way, I hated it for giving me something to care about, even in such a microscopic sense. I wanted to be asleep or dead or something in between, but now I was present and my eyes were still open because of the stupid cardboard box. I tore it open, scattering packing peanuts all across the carpet. Elena would have had a cow if she had been there. I smiled a little despite myself. My smile quickly dropped as the contents of the box began to reveal themselves beneath the styrofoam. At first, I thought it was a mannequin. It wouldn't be that surprising, I guess, considering we lived right next door to a clothing boutique. I thought maybe there was a chance something they ordered for the store just got dropped off at the wrong place. But as I looked closer, forcing my vision to focus, my stomach sank. It was a sex doll. Clear as day, no mannequin had that kind of detail. The doll came in several different pieces. The long legs lying separate to the torso, which was separate to the head. The skin was a tan shade of olive, and her hair was long, dark brown and tangled. She wasn't skinny, which was the first thing I noticed that was strange, stranger than a hyper-realistic sex doll on my doorstep. I mean, she wasn't fat either, per se, but the shape of her body was nothing like the sex dolls I had seen before on the internet. Not petite, not toned, or even overly curvy either. Looking at her body felt familiar to me, like slipping on a sock or climbing into bed, like something I had done thousands of times before. Then I saw her eyes. Brown eyes with little flecks of copper. Permanently sad eyes crinkled at the corners and downturned with long swooping eyelashes. Her eyes. Eleanor. Before I could stop myself, I reached out. I touched her face. The skin was soft and almost oily to the touch. But I only thought about that the next day. It wasn't the first thing I noticed. The first thing I noticed was that her skin was warm. I leaped backwards, the couch scraping loudly against the floorboards. Yet another thing she would have scolded me for. The open, untouched beer landed on my cushions and tipped over, spilling everywhere. My breathing came shallow and ragged, and I grabbed at my chest as if my heart might stop. I felt like it might. That was her, my Eleanor. This doll was her, down to every tiny, inconspicuous detail. Even down to the pores on her nose and the slight cleft in her upturned chin. Outside of the panic, I felt nothing. I wasn't capable. I could feel my brain shutting down. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear anything but the ringing in my ears. I sat there in silence for what felt like an hour, until I could convince my body to move. And at that time, all I could think to do was drag myself to bed and fall asleep. So that was what I did. In the morning, the first thing I felt was rage. At first, I wasn't even entirely sure why I was so angry, but it didn't take very long for it to come rushing back to me. The doll. I ripped open the box, dumping the contents out on the floor of the living room. Fueled only by my blind foray, I shuffled aggressively through the packing peanuts, refusing to look at the doll more than I was physically forced to. I had to find something, some clue as to who had sent this to me. Who would be so sick in the head that they thought this was a good idea for a joke? I had half a mind to call up her brother or one of her cousins who had always hated me and demand an answer, but I quickly decided against that. They would never let me see their family again, and they were all I had left of my wife. I didn't find anything but a slip of paper that fluttered out after I had completely torn through everything, with a simple message typed in the center. Customer support and then a phone number. I dialed immediately. They picked up right on the third ring. "Hello, this is customer support. How may I help you today?" The voice was cheerful and practiced, recited. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I had no plan other than to call. And now I was clamming up. "Who are you?" It was all I could think to say. The female voice on the other end of the line offered a polite laugh. Not unkind, but still corporate in nature. "May I ask what it is that you're calling about?" I swallowed hard, my eyes drifting over to the doll. My throat ached. It felt like I was coming down with something. "I received, a doll. I didn't order it." "I see." I heard typing on a keyboard and I almost felt like I could see her nodding her head. "Could you read me the serial number?" "Serial number?" "Should be right on the doll's head, right behind the ear." I shivered, my face crumpling. I slowly kneeled down, reaching out with trembling fingers to move her hair to the side. There was a serial number, black figures stamped into her fake skin. Right below that, there was something else. I felt bile rise in the back of my throat. A little tattoo set right behind the lobe of her ear, a small hibiscus flower. My hand flew to my own ear, touching the one that matched it. "I hate this placement." I could hear her whine, as if she were saying it right next to me, a smile in her voice. "They did me so wrong. Diego, why didn't you go fight that guy for me? Why didn't you take him out to the parking lot?" I didn't realize I was crying until I tried to speak again. What is this?" "Serial number?" I wiped at my face, trying not to audibly sniffle. 20200715001 "One moment, please." I heard more typing and then silence. When she spoke again, I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if her tone had changed slightly. "I see here that you were sent one of our sample models, Diego. We do have upgrades available if you're interested." I didn't catch that she had used my name. If I had, I definitely would have questioned it. "What? Who sent it?" "I'm not at liberty to say. I'm sorry about that." "Well, I'd like to return it." The anger was coming back with a vengeance, and I felt hot all over. "I don't know who would think this was fucking funny, but it's not, and I don't know what kind of company would." "Please don't raise your voice at me." She cut me off, her voice somehow even more sickly cheerful and corporate than before. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes. "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I would like to return it, please." I would highly advise against that. Something about the way she said it, as well as the words themselves, made me feel violently uneasy. I stammered through a response, taken completely off guard. What do you mean? I don't want it. I would like to return it." "What do you mean by that?" "If you have any other questions, we're always here, okay?" "Thank you for calling customer support today. I hope everything was to your satisfaction." She didn't wait for me to reply. The line went dead, leaving me holding my phone to my ear in a silent room. My jaw slack. I felt like I could feel the doll watching me, like Eleanor, but not. Like Eleanor, but without a soul. I googled the customer support phone number. Nothing came up besides an address that was seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Nowhere near where I lived. I hauled into the closet in the spare room and closed the door. I wanted to drive it to the dump or even just throw it back outside the doorstep, but something stopped me. I knew it wasn't her. It was the furthest thing from her, actually. It was some sort of disgusting evil joke. I didn't know if it was worse if someone commissioned it or if that company just sold dolls that looked exactly like my Eleanor already. Actually, I did know which was worse. Never mind. But in a way, it was her. It looked like her, and when I moved it with my hands around her waist, I was hit with an overwhelming wave of nausea. It felt just like it did the night she died. It felt just like holding her waist on the ground, her body slumped against me, what was left of her brain leaking out onto my shoulder, her skull all but eviscerated from that gunshot wound. The gun they still hadn't been able to find, with a trigger on it that was pulled by someone they also hadn't been able to identify. I tried to forget about it, but it was that very feeling that caused me to bring the doll back out of the closet and put the pieces together, moving slowly as if I was sleepwalking. Maybe I was. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I slept next to the doll that night. I didn't use it. I would be lying if I said the thought didn't cross my mind, but it felt too wrong, too horrible to consider more than as a passing thought. It wasn't Eleanor, it was some plastic imitation, but even so, sleeping with my arms around her like I never thought I would get to do again almost made me want to believe in a god. I dressed her in some of Eleanor's old pajamas and I fell asleep faster and more restfully than I had in weeks. It felt so real that when I woke up, I went to kiss her on the cheek before I remembered. Her body was firm in mine, her skin slightly clammy like it would be on the real Eleanor right when she woke up, when she would pry my arms off of her with her nose crunched up and mutter, "Ew, we're sweaty." I called my mom and I told her what had happened. I didn't give her all the details, the thought too awkward, if nothing else to elaborate, but I was pretty sure she got the picture. It was clear she didn't believe me. She asked a lot of questions, all of them along the lines of, "Are you sure you didn't order it and forget about it?" And, "Honey, are you feeling stable enough to be alone right now?" All of this was about a week ago. I've tried a few more times to tell people about this. I even talked to her brother, but no one seems to believe me. When I show them the doll, they change how they're talking to me and they look at me with eyes that are full of disgust, only thinly veiled by pity. I know, I'm losing them now. They've stopped even pretending to humor me. I can't even blame them because I can't even bring myself to get rid of her. She's all I have. I know this is embarrassing. I know you're all going to make fun of me for this. I just can't let her go. I can't do it. She just feels so real. I probably wouldn't be posting this though if it weren't for the email I got today from the funeral home. Something happened to Eleanor's body. They won't give me all of the details over email or over the phone, but they want me to come down right away, so I'm going to do that after I finish writing this down. But that isn't the worst part, not by far. Last night I noticed that Eleanor is starting to smell. Messages kept appearing on my daughter's window. She thinks they're from her imaginary friend. "Daddy, come look," Millie yelled from her balcony above me. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, wiping the sweaty forehead. "Come quick." It was only 9 in the morning, yet I have worked since 7 on painting the fence. I needed a break anyway. I went up to her room and I saw what she was pointing at. The window was covered in foggy condensation, and as if somebody wrote it with their finger, there was a single word on it. "Help." "My friend wrote it." "Which friend?" "Sam. He comes to my room sometimes at night." I raised an eyebrow. I know kids can make up imaginary friends sometimes. Hell, even I did, as Mom told me once. The thing is, when it happens with your kid, it's a whole different story. I chose my next words very carefully. "Why did Sam write this, Millie?" "I don't know. He seems sad." "How come?" "He's always frowning. He doesn't speak." I figured the divorce would be hard on Millie. I was lucky enough to get custody and take her away from her narcissistic mother, who mentally abused her in a way she was too young to understand. The final straw was when Millie caught her cheating. She tried gaslighting my own daughter against me, to both distance her from myself and to try and get Millie on her side before inevitable divorce. I was so proud of Millie. She told me that mom had a friend visiting several times a week while I was away at work, and that something seemed wrong to her. God bless her. For a 9-year-old, she was really smart. She understood to a certain level why we had to get divorced, but that did not change the fact that she still missed her mommy. Afterwards, I did the only logical thing, even though I knew it would not be easy for Millie. We moved 3 states away to a small town in the Midwest. I hoped the fresh start would be good for both of us, and I did not think twice when I saw the listing for a 2-story house being sold at a relatively cheap price. Located on the edge of the city with the beautiful nature around it, it was perfect. My boss was very understanding when I asked to work remotely, so I figured even if something doesn't fit us here, we could simply move again. I knew this was a lot to process for her. A lot of changes happened, and I tried giving her as much attention as possible. But between both company and housework, it was not easy. So perhaps all of this was just her way to cope. Maybe she made up a friend to express her conflicting feelings to someone. Finding friends in a new area was not easy. Maybe she was coping with big life changes, or maybe this was just a ploy to get more attention from the daddy. I looked over the window again. The fact that message literally said help only supported my theory. Alright, sweetie, you know what? How about I finish my work later and we can go get ice cream now? Yay! She burst with joy for a moment, face turning to frown a moment after. I wish Sam could go with us. We can buy you some toys and you can show them to Sam later. I played along only for a bit. I knew I should acknowledge her feelings but not go overboard with it. Pretty soon, Sam might become real if I did that. We spent the day at the mall. I got her some ice cream as promised, some dolls and clothing for them, and she even begged me for an expensive dollhouse. I gave in. Today was her day. Anything that could make her mind off. It worked. She did not mention Sam for the rest of the day, nor did I. I made her some macaroni and cheese in the evening, and we watched Finding Nemo. I told her it was my favorite cartoon and she loved it. I took her to my room, kissed her goodbye, and went myself to bed. Next morning, I got back to painting the fence. Around the same time as yesterday, Millie called me. I was not about to dismiss her feelings yet, so I played along again. I got to her room and sure enough, there were the words on the window again. Under the shed. Unlike the one from yesterday, this message gave me chills. I could associate the word help with Millie's feelings, but this seemed too random for her. Why do you think Sam wrote that, sweetie? I asked carefully. He is a sad daddy. He needs you to help him. I turned to her, trying to not give away the glimpse of panic in my eyes. What does Sam look like? Oh, I can see him in the dark exactly. He just sits in the corner of the room, swaying. Swaying? How do you know he is named Sam? Yes, with hands around his legs. That is all that he speaks all the time. Sam, Sam, Sam. A puzzle started coming together in my head. I didn't believe in ghosts too much, but small towns, a cheap house that sold pretty much instantly. Is Sam real? Is this house actually haunted? I tried laughing casually and telling Millie I would help Sam after we got some breakfast. I could not eat though. I watched Millie. She was not scared, unlike me. If Sam was indeed real and Millie was not afraid of him, perhaps he is just a what? Benign ghost? Do those exist? I went over to my first door neighbor's house after, to an older gentleman named Mark, who came over to introduce himself the first day I came here. I thought he would give me some answers. We sat. He poured us some fine whiskey. I tried refusing as it was still morning. He persuaded me, saying he doesn't have that many people left to share drinks with. I accepted. Mark, I have to ask you a weird question. Why was the house I bought so damn cheap? I was wondering when you were going to ask me that. He sat, putting his glass away, tone turning serious. Well, before you came over, a few months ago, there was a murder in the house. Blood drained from my face, and he must have noticed it. Yes, I know, not a thing you want to hear. What happened? A father suffering from schizophrenia, which we did not know until then. He killed his wife, presumably his son and himself. Mother's body was found in the house, but his and son's bodies were never found. Mark lost himself in thoughts for a moment and gulped. It was declared as murder-suicide. Blood trails led behind the house towards the woods. Disappearing there, I was the one to call the police actually. I heard him yelling over and over, "Kill them all, I must kill them all." One of the people that saw him that day said that he snapped, thinking his family had been replaced by imposters. I see. I downed my drink, handing over a glass to Mark for a refill. Don't think about it too much, kid. Paranoia and schizophrenia are a dangerous combination, but it's all in the past now. Focus on the future. It's a wonderful house, and those things happen unfortunately. Yes, they do, I said absently. I could not tell him that I thought the house was haunted. I would look crazy. I downed the second drink, thanked him, and went back to the house. I knew what I had to do now. I waited for Millie to fall asleep. As soon as I put her to bed, I took the shovel and went straight for the shed. It was behind the house, at the far edge of the backyard, tall trees towering over it, looking much bigger and dense at night. The same forest where father took the kid, presumably. I only checked it out the first day I came here. I did not have time nor strength to deal with it. A large metal door creaked and I was hit with the stale smell of mold and rust. Boxes and tools were scattered all over the place, and the light of the flashlight hit something that drew my attention. The shed did not have a floor. It was basically put right on the ground, plain dirt below my feet. In the corner, I could see the edge of something metal. I moved the boxes to reach it, coughing from the dust, and shined the light on it. It seemed like the hatch door. Hatch door under the shed. The police must have missed it. A few months back, I debated if I should open it. I thought about it for a moment. I remembered a documentary I caught on a TV once. It was either sudden, violent death or unfinished business that prevented dead people from ascending, keeping their ghosts on earth. The only logical explanation was that little Sam's ghost is still at unrest because he was violently murdered by his father. By finding his body, I could help him. A proper burial would release him, I guess, and he will not visit Millie at night anymore. I grabbed the hatch and I pulled. A cold gust of air blew right through me, sending shivers down my spine, almost knocking me down. I thought I even heard a rough voice for a moment. I didn't make out the words, however. I pointed the flashlight down below and I could immediately realize it was one of those end-of-the-world bunkers. It made sense. Of course, a paranoid schizophrenic would have atomic shelter in his backyard. I could see 2 bunk beds, shelves filled with canned food, and right there in the middle, remains of 2 bodies and a shotgun between them. I didn't need to see anything else. I ran back to the house and called the police immediately. 2 patrol cars appeared soon, and I led them to the shelter. One of the officers, a chubby man named Robert, knew the family. Tears appeared at the corner of his eyes when he saw decaying bodies, and by the clothing only he said he could confirm it was them. He did not need to wait for forensics. I led the officers to finish the work, feeling relief and fear at the same time. I did help Sam. That, however, meant Sam was real, at least at one point. Mark was on the street in front of the house with a couple of neighbors that came to check why there were patrol lights in the middle of night. I pulled him to the side and explained. This time, I did not care about sounding crazy, so I told him everything. Night has been too crazy already. But all of that meant little Sam was finally put to rest. Mark squinted his eyes at me. "What do you mean, Sam?" "It was what the ghost kept repeating," Millie said. "We figured it was his name. Sam is the older brother. He is still alive, working in New York City. He was there when all of this happened. You actually bought a house from him though, his agent, I think." "Huh?" I tried making sense of it, but I gave up. I was already mentally exhausted. I realized I haven't checked on Millie since I put her to sleep. Lights and noise might have woken her up. I waved goodnight to Mark. I got to Millie's room and suspected she was already awake. "Hi baby, sorry about—" "Daddy! Sam was speaking," she interrupted me. "He came to say goodbye." "Did he?" "I'm glad he did." I still tried acting as if all of this was normal, which was not by far. Him coming to say goodbye raised hair on my skin. "He left you a message," Millie said cheerfully, pointing at the window. I moved the curtains, and surely enough, there was a message. Not the one I wanted or expected to see. "Kill them all. I can finally kill them all." The people upstairs won't stop singing happy birthday. It's been 5 hours. I don't usually work on Sundays, but I needed some extra cash, so I took an early shift. I came home at around 2 p.m. I live in this apartment building. My apartment is on the first floor, along with another one that belongs to this dude who's rarely home. There's Mrs. Fox's place on the ground floor, and then the second floor has 2 other flats. One owned by an elderly couple and the other by this family I don't really see that often, directly above me. Sometimes I hear the kids in the morning moaning about having to get ready for school, and then stomping down the stairs. Sometimes I hear hushed voices and dishes clattering. After 10 p.m., everything usually goes quiet. I got to my door, and as I was searching for my keys in my bag, I could hear voices upstairs. They were hushed and a little tense, stressing the words and mixing them together. I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but they seemed to be talking about something really important. Now, keep in mind that I've never seen these people before. I assumed they were a family because I kept hearing the kids and sounds that I generally attribute to a family home. It's not like I've personally met them. I just assumed. Anyway, as I said, I finally got a hold of my keys and unlocked the door. Yet I didn't immediately step inside after I opened it. I don't know why I let it swing open and remained there listening for 2 more seconds, but I'm somewhat glad I did. The moment the door was heard, the voices upstairs stopped completely, as if they were listening to me now. I remained still. We all studied the silence for a while. I heard a singular step on the stairs above. That's when my back went cold and my muscles tensed up, for whatever reason. I got the sudden urge to just go inside and shut the door behind me, which I did. Afterwards, I started putting some groceries in the fridge and doing some errands around the house. Faintly at first, then stronger, I started hearing the birthday song upstairs. I smiled and sighed. They were planning the birthday, man. That's why they were so precautious, so nervous. It sounded like there were around 5 to 6 people singing, maybe, "Happy birthday, dear Jonna." That was cute. When they finished, they started again. I did find it weird, but I assumed that the kid had asked for it again. Kids love blowing out candles and whatever. It was an awfully long song. It kept looping until reaching its conclusion, just like the first time. It had a lot of unnecessary runs and filler and extra lyrics. When they finished, a little pause followed. Then they started again in the exact same way. Fucking weird family, I thought, and by the time I'd gotten annoyed, so I just put on my headphones and laid down on the couch. I fell asleep at around 4 or 5 p.m. I woke up from the nap disoriented, Man, after work naps hit the hardest. I'd slept until around 8 p.m. and the sun was peeking at me from behind some buildings. A sunset that was more blue than red, a melancholy and confusion that reminded me of how liminal your house felt when you would go to sleep after school and wake up with a sore throat and a huge pillow mark on your face, with your mood ruined, your mother suddenly calling you out to go to dinner. I swallowed, staring blankly at the window highlighted in golden rum. I rubbed my eyes, then massaged my face. I stood up to get a glass of water, walked barefoot to the kitchen, which was now sunken in that specific 8 p.m. darkness, and stood still and silent, not knowing what I wanted from my life. Then, I finally registered one important detail. The folks upstairs were still singing Happy Birthday. I listened for a while, unsure of what my reaction should be. I wondered if they had some recording playing on a loop, but that wasn't really the case as each version sounded different from the previous. They were really weird, or maybe their kid was just eccentric. Maybe they were practicing for some performance. I started thinking, as I said, I hadn't personally met these people before, so I had no idea what they did. Maybe they were really practicing. I put my headphones on and went on trying to make some sort of dinner, even though I wasn't really hungry and my throat still hurt. I ate, watched my show, then took a shower. Their singing had started to piss me off. It was now approaching 10 p.m. and I felt the need to go upstairs and tell them to quit it. I'm not confrontational. I really don't like telling people they upset me, and most don't have an appropriate reaction at all. I didn't want to talk to them, so I called my mom. I started telling her about my day, but she interrupted me, asking about the people upstairs. Yeah, they've been doing it for hours. I don't know. It's starting to really get on my nerves. Well, go up to them and knock. Aren't the other residents annoyed? The old people upstairs? I'm sure. They wanted to sleep by now. Maybe I could just put on some music that could cover them up. But do you want to listen to music? No, not really. Then why do it to please them? Go upstairs, Michaela. I sighed and reluctantly agreed. After hanging up, I put on a sweater and unlocked my front door. The moment I opened it, the air felt a little colder. I stared at the dark hallway, illuminated by the ray of light from my door and another faint light coming from upstairs. I went up the stairs. The second floor was more animated than the first. The door to the family's apartment was slightly open, and I could see the light and movement behind. I slowly approached it, then peeked inside. I could see a hallway with balloons and confetti peacefully floating around. A faint smell of candles and sweetness lunged out. I didn't want to disturb too much, so I tried to be discreet while I quietly and almost imperceptibly pushed the door slightly more. The small hallway made way to a dining room. The shadows were dancing on the walls as people clapped around the table and sang. On the table was a cake with pink and purple frosting, sprinkles, and some writing I couldn't really decipher. The song carried on, but was hoarser than I remembered it. People were smiling, swaying from side to side at the person sitting in front of the cake. The lighting was dim and pleasant. Its only source being the candles. The people around were a little tense, but overall it reminded me of my own birthday as a kid. Some boxes lay scattered on the floor. I tried to take a better look at them, or the kid. The child looked like a young boy, with a big birthday hat on. He, I think, could have been 10 or 12, and his face was round and stretched into a big smile. I stared for a while at the teeth. I don't know what prompted me to make that observation, but he had adult teeth, which were rotten and yellow, sticking out of his mouth in abnormal directions. His eyes were wide and red, as if he'd been crying for a while. I don't remember seeing him blink at all. In the minutes that I watched that felt like hours. He looked really shaken and tense. I'd never seen a child like that before, never in my life. All the courage I'd had before peeking through the door had evaporated. I must have zoned out watching the scene when I was pulled away from my trance. The kid shifted his eyes from the candles, which had now almost completely melted, and looked straight at me. I felt seen like I'd never been before. My heart completely collapsed, leaving a painful knot in my chest as I made eye contact with the child. His smile slowly faded, turning into a grimace. I wanted to run, but I was somehow frozen in place. Suddenly, he blew out the candles, and the room was engulfed in darkness. I heard something shuffle in dark towards me, gasped and shut the door behind me as I practically jumped down the stairs. The shuffling and scratching followed. I gripped the door and slammed it behind me just as something slammed into it from the other side. Eyes wide and unfocused, I barely managed to lock it as the banging started. The song upstairs had stopped. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was completely dark now, but I could make out the details of the face I had looked at before in the dimly lit dining room. Only now we were at eye level, which was impossible since that had been a kid. Had it? Or had it been just a person? The more I thought, the more I realized I had no idea what prompted me to assume it had been a kid. The round face, childish clothing, trying to decipher the memory meant analyzing every detail of that horrible face, a thing I didn't want to do. The banging turned to scratching. I yelled. I was going to call the police. My voice died in my throat. The banging was so strong that it was undoubtedly going to break down my door. Suddenly, I heard a distinct sound upstairs. The banging and scratching instantly stopped. It was a door opening. The elderly couple's door. "Hey, what on earth are you doing? It is the middle of the night." I watched through the peephole as the kid not a kid walked away from my door upstairs. "Quit it before I call the police. It's enough that I have to hear your kids' tantrums every day, lady." But the voice abruptly stopped. I listened, barely breathing. No scream, no sound, nothing. Faint scratching, then shuffling, then a faint cry that sounded more like forced sobs. I silently dialed up the police and barely managed to whisper what was going on, afraid that I might be heard. As I was detailing the problem, I looked through the peephole once again to be greeted by that face, grimaced, eyes bloodshot and sunken into the head. "You're welcome to join next year. That's why we left the door open," came the voice of an adult out of the face of a 12-year-old. I gasped and ducked, as if that would save me. The police came in around half an hour, which was an insanely long amount of time. They went upstairs and sealed off the entirety of the second floor. They refused to give me details. I had to wait for the headlines and accept some vague answers from the numerous phone calls I'd given since. "Miss, there were never kids living upstairs. 2 of them were grown-ups, but 2 of them were pretending to be kids." They refused to tell me what had happened to the elderly couple. They barely mumbled something that included kidnapping, massacre, disembowelment. Some of the victims, which had been many, were hostages made to play along. The presents were just pieces of flesh, toys made of bones with bows on them. One of them was a teeth necklace. I'm going through a really hard time now, trying to move all my stuff without having to go to that place too often. I can't sell it or rent it out, maybe to some true crime fanatic. I moved in with my parents, but I asked them to add extra locks to the doors and windows and security cameras everywhere. They assumed I was paranoid and suffering from PTSD. I let them believe that. However, I'd watched the security footage of that night, showing the outside of my door. The birthday boy I'd spoken to hadn't gone back upstairs. He just crawled to the window and jumped out. I don't know where he is now. I hope it goes both ways.